The Demon's Souls remake from Bluepoint Games is a faithful adaptation of the original Souls-like title with stunning visual upgrades. As driven home by critic reviews, it's truly the best way to replay this FromSoftware classic and is a wonderful reminder of how far the series has come while retaining its challenging roots. Though Soulsborne games are best known for being incredibly difficult, they're also littered with references and secrets that leave fans clamoring for more. This extends to the history of the series itself, which is defined by unforeseen victories, a visionary creator, and a willingness to push boundaries in game design. You likely know all about Dark Souls' rise to glory, how it reportedly revolutionized the concept of challenging gameplay and spawned a new genre that indie and AAA devs alike have feverishly tried to capitalize on. Pro basketball has gotten a lot tamer over time, which some people really dislike. But Demon's Souls has its own untold story, including details that might have eluded even the most die-hard Souls fans. Demon's Souls almost never came to be the Souls-like genre originated with FromSoftware but has slowly transitioned into a go-to option for developers. Daily Beast contributor Marlow Stern called the modern-day NBA, softer than baby thighs. NBA Hall of Famer and renowned backboard-demolisher Shaquille O'Neal declared, "Michael Jordan playing against Detroit and the Bad Boys, that was the real NBA." Fans of the rough-and-tumble games of the late 1980s and early 90s would likely agree. Games like Ashen, Neo, Dead Cells, and many others have picked up the mantle of puzzle-driven combat and frustrating difficulty. Back then fists flew the way three-pointers do in the small ball era, and nobody hit harder than the Detroit Pistons' Bad Boys. The Bad Boys' philosophy seemed to be, if you can't beat them up, and if you can beat them up anyway. The Pistons battered the Boston Celtics and smacked around the Chicago Bulls. For 538, the more unsportsmanlike they were, the more they won. Without the original Demon's Souls, however, these games, possibly even the genre, may have never emerged. At the height of their success they were the dirtiest players in the league. The gaming world narrowly avoided this fate thanks to the efforts of series creator Hidetaka Miyazaki. In a 2015 interview with The Guardian, Miyazaki explained how he got his start in game development with FromSoftware, and how he basically stumbled onto the success of the Souls franchise. Starting as a coder for the Armored War series in 2004, Miyazaki saw an opportunity emerge. They won 2 NBA titles back-to-back, even beating the Showtime Lakers in the 1989 finals. Demon's Souls wasn't doing well, he said. Yet contrary to what Celtics president Red Auerbach claimed, the Bad Boys weren't just classless bullies. These brawlers could ball with the best of them. Detroit had multiple Hall of Famers and phenomenal role players who created timeless, sometimes bloody memories. The project had problems and the team had been unable to create a compelling prototype. With Demon's Souls already on a downward trajectory, Miyazaki reasoned he could have free rein with little risk if he managed to take over the game's development. Sure enough, upon transitioning to the dev team and laying out his vision, he changed pretty much everything about it. While it wasn't a resounding success, it laid the groundwork for future Souls-like titles. Demon's Souls is a spiritual successor that led to a spiritual successor despite undergoing a name change. The Dark Souls series is known as the spiritual successor to Demon's Souls. Here's how time has treated the Bad Boys. Isaiah Thomas got sued for bad behavior. The fierce and fearless leader of the Bad Boys, Isaiah Thomas had a habit of choking, but not in the classic sports definition. But did you know that Demon's Souls itself is something of a spiritual successor to FromSoftware's King's Field series? You wouldn't know this just by looking at the two titles. Visually reminiscent of the original Doom, King's Field drops you into a first-person perspective as you navigate a labyrinthian layout of medieval-themed caves, castles, and catacombs. Of course, the gameplay couldn't be more different from Demon's Souls. In 1989 Thomas choked his assistant coach, who apparently allowed himself to be used as a neck-shaped stress ball so Thomas wouldn't attack Chicago Bull Bill Cartwright. The next year he allegedly choked and shoved a TV reporter against a car. It's not in third person, there's no roll mechanic or bonfire system, and the level design doesn't weave back on itself in the same ways. However, the moments of frustrating difficulty, the dreadful medieval aesthetic, and slow methodical combat are all present.
Though you might be tempted to label Demon's Souls as a King's Field sequel of sorts, Miyazaki clarified to Rolling Stone that King's Field and Dark Souls are two separate entities, guided by differing core game design concepts. However, he admitted during a separate Game Informer interview that King's Field definitely influenced the ideas behind Demon's Souls, but we envisioned this as a completely original title. So, as chronicled by multiple Reddit users, don't be surprised if you see familiar areas or even enemy types if you check out King's Field. Praise the Sun originated in Demon's Souls. Hidetaka Miyazaki seems to treat any rejection of his ideas like a challenge. Thomas also used his hands for other purposes, like punching Bill Cartwright, and some of those uses were otherworldly. In Game 6 of the 1988 NBA Finals, Thomas scored 25 points in a single quarter with a sprained ankle, and in a legendary performance against the New York Knicks he scored 16 points in 94 seconds. He often does this either by outright defying conventions, such as basing a game fully around intense difficulty, or sneaking references into his designs and hoping no one will notice. Take the Praise the Sun emote, for example. This iconic element of Dark Souls, used by the surprisingly optimistic warrior of sunlight, Solaire, didn't originate with him. Rivaled only by the likes of Magic Johnson, Thomas was a phenomenal point guard who finished his 13-year career as the Pistons' all-time leader in points, assists, and steals. Not yet done with the NBA, the future Hall of Famer became part owner of the Toronto Raptors and would coach the Pacers, Pistons, and Knicks in addition to holding front office positions. Also not done being bad, Thomas was sued and found liable for verbally abusing and sexually harassing women during his time with the Knicks. Nonetheless, Knicks owner and lawsuit co-defendant James Dolan, who picked Harvey Weinstein to produce a Rockettes show, named Thomas as president of the Knicks' WNBA sister team the Liberty. Bill Laimbeer won championships in the NBA and WNBA. You know people really hate you when someone make-believe murders you and a crowd of onlookers approves. Like many elements of the series Patches Anyone, it was in Demon's Souls first, all thanks to Miyazaki. In the book Dark Souls Design Works translation via Giant Bomb user 7 Force, Miyazaki unpacked how the meme-worthy pose came to be. When I presented Demon's Souls to the rest of the company I showed them that pose and one of the higher-ups told me it just wasn't cool enough. Miyazaki told the executive he'd remove the pose, but he secretly kept it in the game. With the development of Dark Souls, Miyazaki decided to give the pose its due with a far more prominent role, spawning the Praise the Sun meme so many fans know and love. The reason Demon's Souls 2 never materialized. There's a reason FromSoftware created Dark Souls rather than a Demon's Souls sequel. In 1987, Pistons center Bill Laimbeer experienced that hatred in Atlanta when a Hawks fan chain sawed a Laimbeer dummy in half on the court with the blessing of the Hawks front office. As with most tales of video game IP, it's all about ownership, sales, and expectations. Sony Interactive Entertainment holds the rights to Demon's Souls, and Bandai Namco Entertainment holds the rights to Dark Souls, so they call the shots on remasters and remakes, Miyazaki told Rolling Stone. In 2013, former SAI president Shuhei Yoshida mentioned to Polygon that he loves FromSoftware's Demon's Souls and would really like to see more of that game on PlayStation platforms. Despite this enthusiasm, Sony's actions in the following years seemed to tell a rather different story. Shuhei admitted to Game Informer that Sony and the Japanese media underestimated Demon's Souls. His initial 2-hour playthrough, which left him stuck at the beginning of the game, ultimately hindered Demon's Soul release in Japan. What did Laimbeer do to earn such vitriol? A better question is, what didn't he do? Laimbeer was a cerebral bruiser, an enforcer who would ferociously elbow you in the face. He once busted Larry Bird open that way, but who would also goad you into getting ejected. If not for third-party publishers like Atlus and Namco, Demon's Souls might never have become an international cult classic. Despite Demon's Souls' eventual success, Sony dragged its feet on developing a sequel. However, the release of a full Demon's Souls remake as a PS5 launch title seems to indicate the company's newfound confidence in the series. Hopefully, that also means more Demon's Souls in the future. The Demon's Souls remake was a long time coming. One of the first potential teases of a Demon's Souls remake surfaced in 2015. Amping up the suspense even more, this tease came straight from the official Bloodborne Twitter account. A former Dallas coach recalled seeing Laimbeer stick his jaw out and take a punch, fall down, get back up and point to the bench when his opponent got tossed from the game. Unsurprisingly, he attracted quite a few fists. The eminently punchable Lambier played in the NBA for 14 seasons, during which he often sported a black eye or broken nose. As talented as he was treacherous, he was a 4-time All-Star and top-tier scorer and rebounder. The image in question showed a stack of video games with a very conspicuous case labeled Demon Souls sitting atop multiple copies of Bloodborne. That was it. After he stopped hitting NBA players, Lambier hit the jackpot as a WNBA coach and president. Despite the frenzy of resulting speculation, nothing else materialized or seemed to come from the tweet. Rumors began building again in 2018 when Sony updated the ESRB rating for Demon's Souls on PS4, only to die down once more when no Demon's Souls remake announcement followed. In late 2019, something more tangible happened. He earned Coach of the Year honors and won 3 league championships with the Detroit, now Tulsa, Shock and set franchise records with the New York Liberty. He currently coaches the Las Vegas Aces. Rick Mahorn's educational rollercoaster. Rick Mahorn formed one half of Detroit's notorious Bruise Brothers with fellow enforcer Bill Lambier, but his individual contribution was arguably greater. A series of tweets in October and November from Bluepoint Games, hot off the critical success of its Shadow of the Colossus remake, cryptically teased a new project. As UPI put it, Mahorn gave the bad boys their swagger. Celtics great Dennis Johnson said the swag-alicious Piston made it so Bill Lambier could say he was a bad boy, too. A daunting on-court presence, Mahorn was a rebounding machine that didn't just attack backboards. In 1988 he started a brawl with the Bulls by throwing Michael Jordan onto the floor. In 1989 the Minnesota Timberwolves claimed Mahorn in the NBA expansion draft but traded him to the 76ers when he refused to play. After moving to Philly, Mahorn didn't get much brotherly love from Bill Lambier, who shoved a basketball in Mahorn's face during competition and incurred the wrath of non-Detroit bad boy Charles Barkley. Mahorn played for various teams during the 1990s, including Detroit again, before calling it quits. Some thought it referenced Metal Gear, while others expected Castlevania. But during PlayStation's 2020 Future of Gaming stream, Sony at last confirmed that Bluepoint's mysterious project was a Demon's Souls remake for PS5. You can beat the tutorial stage in Demon's Souls. It's no surprise that Demon's Souls is incredibly difficult. That holds especially true when facing the Vanguard boss during the tutorial. That didn't mean the end of his battles though. Despite coaching in the CBA and later taking the reins from Lambier as head coach of the WNBA's Detroit Shock, Mahorn lost a fight with financial debt and filed for bankruptcy in 2010. He kept fighting, though, and worked as radio broadcaster for the Pistons. In a touching tribute to his late mother, Mahorn went back to school and completed his undergraduate degree in 2015. Adrian Dantley became a non-NBA guard before joining the Bad Boys in 1986. Adrian Dantley established himself as a supremely lethal shooter. At this point you're inexperienced, wrestling with the gameplay and trying your best to make a dent. While playing for Utah, Dantley averaged over 30 points per game for 4 consecutive seasons. Also incredibly cunning, he would let opponents block his first shot and then roundly trounce them thereafter. Despite his high basketball IQ, Dantley tended to butt heads with coaches and players. He also literally butted heads with Pistons teammate Vinnie Johnson, knocking both men unconscious during a game. Things got so sour in Utah that according to Deadspin, the Jazz's GM and head coach fined Dantley $3 and made him pay in dimes 30 pieces of silver for an alleged betrayal, like Judas before the Last Supper, before trading him to Detroit. Dantley played in Detroit for 2 years and helped carry the team to the 1988 NBA Finals. Unfortunately, the Bad Boys couldn't seal the deal, and Dantley was dealt to another team 3 months before Detroit won its first title. He blamed Isaiah Thomas for the trade, later calling him a con man. The heartbreak of missing out on a ring was followed by a broken fibula that put Dantley on the shelf for a year. He went ring-less his whole career. After playing in Italy and working as an assistant coach in Maryland, Dantley eventually became a school crossing guard because he wanted something to do and didn't want to pay for his own health insurance. Vinnie Johnson aspired to be an automotive mogul. People called Vinnie Johnson the microwave because,
in many ways, it feels like this boss encounter is built to make you fail, a suspicion that turns out to be somewhat true. Well, nicknames were inspired by household appliances during the 1980s and 90s. You die and are taken through a cutscene that introduces the Nexus, the hub world you call your home, as well as the overall death loop and soul collection process. Many players take this initial boss encounter at face value and continue on with the game. But here's the thing, you can actually beat the Demon's Souls tutorial boss. Boston's Danny Ainge dubbed Johnson the Microwave in part because the Chicago Bears had a dude called the Fridge. Also because Johnson heated up in a hurry and scored 34 points 22 in the fourth quarter against the Celtics despite coming off the bench. Handmixer might have also worked as a nickname because Johnson beat the Portland Trail Blazers like eggs during the 1990 NBA Finals. After spending what seems like an eternity chipping away at its health bar and avoiding every attack, you're rewarded with a few hundred souls and a grey demon's soul. Shortly thereafter, you enter a secret cutscene, only to be killed by the Dragon God and sent to the Nexus anyway. The Dragon God encounter is actually a secret from the original game, not something exclusive to the remake. It's still a rewarding way to get a leg up from the start, even if the end result is the same. What's behind Demon's Soul's mysterious door? According to a Polygon interview with creative director Gavin Moore, Bluepoint wanted to try and keep the core of the game untouched. With Demon's Souls, that's the gameplay, the logic, and the AI, and then everything else is stripped away. But that doesn't mean there aren't some unique additions exclusive to the remake. Perhaps the most obvious of these Demon's Souls remake anomalies was the inclusion of a mysterious door tucked away behind an illusory wall in World 1-3. With 0.7 seconds remaining in Game 5 and the score tied at 90, he buried an off-balance shot to secure Detroit's second championship. When the door was discovered and couldn't be opened, fans launched into speculation about how to unlock it and where it might lead. In the 1990–91 season the microwave didn't look so hot to the Pistons, and they parted ways. Thanks to some extensive Reddit sleuthing by the fan community, Souls Speedrunner Distortion 2 was finally able to get it open. Opening the mysterious door required collecting ceramic coins, a currency likely familiar to those who have played the Shadow of the Colossus remake. These coins can only be attained in Demon's Souls Fractured mode while playing Pure White and Pure Black World tendencies. Johnson took his cooking skills to San Antonio and played 60 games as a Spur. In 1995 Johnson started Piston Automotive, an auto parts supplier that has grown from 200 employees to over 8,000 and made billions in revenue over the years. After acquiring a competitor for $175 million in 2017, Johnson has set his sights on making Piston Automotive a global supplier. Joe Dumars got Detroit's motor running again. Competing against Michael Jordan was a lot like facing an actual bull that flies, so Detroit devised the Jordan rules. Every Piston had a special part to play, for Sports Illustrated, but nobody played a bigger part than Joe Dumars. Dumars came closer than anyone else in the league to neutralizing Jordan, something his airness even acknowledged. The reward for taking on this harrowing feat? The Penetrator armor set, based on the Penetrator boss. It may not be the greatest reward for this late in the game, but it's still a unique addition. The Greatest Demon's Souls Challenge Fractured mode, a take on New Game Plus, wasn't actually part of the first Demon's Souls. Joe is strong, physical, sound, Jordan explained. He doesn't do anything spectacular, but he gets it done. Dumars provided a stabilizing presence when Detroit struggled, according to NBA.com. An all-around solid player who sunk big shots in crucial moments, he shined brightest on the NBA's biggest stage. This is another Bluepoint Studios original, which Gavin Moore described as a mirror mode. When the Bad Boys swept the Lakers in the 1989 Finals, he was named MVP. The next year he overcame the death of his father to help the Pistons claim another championship. That's challenging because you reverse the map. While it doesn't necessarily amp up the difficulty, it does actively disorient the player and hampers any muscle memory you've built. This new mode may seem surprising coming from a studio that sticks to faithful recreations, but its inclusion may actually reference a scrapped, true death, from the original. And he did it all without elbowing or choking people. Dumars was such a good bad boy that the league's Sportsmanship Award was eventually renamed the Joe Dumars Trophy. Dumars wasn't done with trophies after retiring.
He became Detroit's vice president of player personnel and was later promoted to president of operations. Thanks to a series of smart trades and hiring decisions, the Pistons won their third NBA title in 2004 by defeating a stacked Lakers team. Cut dialogue from the Crestfallen Warrior, which was found via an in-game text dump, mentioned the dangers of dying while in soul form. In the current game, this is a non-issue, meaning that line was likely referencing the unrealized true death mode. While the developers at Bluepoint have made no clear reference to this scrapped difficulty, it's possible Bluepoint revived this original idea with fractured mode. It's not a completely faithful translation of true death mode, but it does mark one of the first instances of additional difficulty levels in a Souls-like game. Bluepoint also nearly added an easy mode to the game, but eventually thought better of it. Demon's Souls' 6th Archstone. When it comes to cut content, there's little more notorious in Demon's Souls than the Northern Lands. Unused in-game assets point to an abandoned map hidden behind the broken 6th Archstone in the Nexus. This was first theorized to be a potential DLC drop for the original game where you'd have the opportunity to explore the snowy home of the Land of the Giants. The Pistons opted for new leadership after the 2013-14 season, and Dumars later joined a sports agency. James Edwards didn't reach career nirvana. NBA.com described the acquisition of James Edwards as the most overlooked move in the construction of the Bad Boys. Obtained in exchange for a no. That never came to pass, and the unused area and theories about the broken Archstone persisted long after its release. With the announcement of the remake, some fans wondered if Bluepoint would explore adding this unfinished area. 2 draft pick and an obscure big man, Edwards was a bench player with a starter stamina, nimble feet, and an unblockable jump shot. Dubbed Buddha by his teammates because of his trademark Fu Manchu and relaxed personality, he wasn't quite as bad as the other boys in Detroit. However, in 1990 he slapped Chicago Bull Ed Nealy during the Eastern Conference Finals. At 34, borderline geriatric for an NBA player, Edwards filled the void when Rick Mahorn got drafted to the Timberwolves. And while many are still poking around, now that the secret of the locked door has been solved, it's very unlikely that there's a secret entrance to a new level in the Nexus. According to Moore, there was a long and hard discussion, but there is no 6th Archstone. Apparently, he had plenty left in the tank because he scored the 3rd most points on the team and didn't hang up his basketball shoes until age 40. There are only 5 Archstones in the Nexus. He ended his career as a member of the Pistons' bitter rivals, the Chicago Bulls. It's true to the original, there's no new Archstone, there's no new world. One can hope that with the success of the Demon's Souls remake, this could be an area explored in a potential sequel. Weirdly, it was also a Bad Boys reunion since former Pistons Dennis Rodman and John Salley had also joined the Bulls. All 3 would win another championship together as part of Chicago's fabled 1995-96 roster. For Edwards, a nice coaching job would have been the cherry atop his retirement sundae, but alas he settled down in Seattle, which no longer has the Supersonics. For now, it's just a fan-favorite theory with no solution. In a 2008 interview he said he did a little bit of work with a sports agency and some PR work. John Salley decided to grow a marijuana business. John Salley didn't earn the nickname Spider by being itsy bitsy because he's 6'11". In all likelihood he went by Spider because like actual spiders, Salley liquefied the insides of his opponents, metaphorically speaking, of course. He did typical big man things like blocking shots but stood out for his ability to hit confidence-withering shots against opponents just before the shot clock ran out. Salley was such a valuable asset that he wound up on 3 different championship teams, the Bad Boys in 1989 and in 90, the 1995-96 Chicago Bulls, and the 1999-2000 Lakers. Off the court, Salley used his humor and charisma to break into showbiz. Fittingly, he made his movie debut in Bad Boys. His performance in the Whoopi Goldberg film Eddie was so compelling that Gene Siskel described Salley's acting as effortless in a good way. Additionally, he's hosted reunion shows for VH1's Basketball Wives and owns a production company. A huge proponent of healthy living, Salley is a vegan chef and health and wellness advocate who espouses something called the Beta Life Path, which promises to activate your heart's joy and participate in the conscious co-creation of our future. If that sounds like pothead jargon, well, Salley is a big proponent of medicinal marijuana and started a company called Deuces, which sells cannabis-based pain relievers. Dennis Rodman's life after Detroit became one long fever dream. A prolific rebounder with more heart than height, defensive virtuoso Dennis Rodman went after basketballs like they owed him money. Rodman wasn't just talented, he revolutionized the forward position, proving you didn't have to be a 7-footer to play like one. In fact, the 6'8" Rodman out-hustled taller men night in and night out. He terrorized teams, per Sports Illustrated, and even when opponents double-teamed him he still might grab 34 rebounds in a game. Nicknamed the Worm, Rodman had a slim frame and frenetic, almost wriggly defensive style that made him a useful weapon against Michael Jordan. Somewhat mislabeled as a backup Jordan stopper by Sports Illustrated, Jordan was unstoppable. Rodman was Detroit's reliable second option behind Joe Dumars for defending against arguably the greatest NBA player who ever lived. Not too shabby. Rodman left Detroit with 2 championship rings and roughly 20 bajillion rebounds. He later went to Chicago and grabbed 3 more titles. A fan of the spotlight, he became a best-selling author, dyed his hair every color in the crayon box, and starred in hilariously bad movies like Double Team, and that's only the tip of his post-Pistons iceberg. Rodman was also married to Carmen Electra for a few months, had a pro wrestling feud with Karl Malone, a real-life feud with the law, an ill-fated romance with Madonna, an ill-conceived bromance with North Korea's dictator, and got involved with the cryptocurrency Potcoin. What hasn't he done? Chuck Daly inspired a league-wide makeover. The greats in any sport have a special it factor, and Chuck Daly absolutely had it. As MLive described, Daly had a fantastic knack for getting players with large egos or extremely dissimilar personalities to gel as a team. In Detroit he also showed his adaptability as a coach. In his debut season, back when Detroit relied on ridiculous scoring ability instead of bruising defense, Daly coached the team to a 186-184 victory over the Denver Nuggets in triple overtime, the highest scoring contest in NBA history. Daly's impressive basketball brain came with an impressive wardrobe that inspired coaches throughout the league to up their suit game. The combination of skill and gravitas he brought to the NBA made him an excellent choice to coach the 1992 Olympic Dream Team. Larry Bird, who was part of that once-in-a-lifetime squad, called it an honor to play for him. Dream teammate Charles Barkley found it baffling that a great man, a nice guy, coached the bad boys. Iconic coach Phil Jackson also had praise for Daly. Sadly, he died of pancreatic cancer in 2009. When he was laid to rest, hundreds of mourners showed up to pay respects. Weirdly, for as exceptional as Chuck Daly was, he never won a Coach of Year award. Instead, the NBA created a Lifetime Achievement Award for coaching in his honor. Trader Jack was irreplaceable. The biggest badass of the Bad Boys era didn't actually play on the team. General manager Jack McCloskey, affectionately known as Trader Jack, proved his toughness before the Bad Boys were bad zygotes. The son of an Irish coal miner who started working at age 12, McCloskey learned basketball by playing among the potholes and standing water of a dirt road with a metal hoop. A World War II veteran, McCloskey commanded roughly 24 men in the Battle of Okinawa as a 19-year-old, per Savannah Now, because the previous captain was killed. After coaching several college and NBA teams, McCloskey rebuilt the previously floundering Pistons in his own image, creating a team of literal fighters. Known for bold trades, he once reportedly offered to give away all the Pistons in exchange for Magic Johnson. In the end, he created his own magic through a series of successful gambles that brought future super coach Chuck Daly and unexpected legends like Dennis Rodman. Thanks to Trader Jack's brilliant risk-taking, the Bad Boys made it to the playoffs 9 years in a row and appeared in 3 consecutive NBA Finals. Sadly, that priceless mind was lost to Alzheimer's. McCloskey passed away in 2017 at age 91.